Hello and welcome to Talking Aussie Books, a new weekly podcast shining a spotlight on Australian fiction. My name is Claudine Tinellis. As a writer and avid reader, I love chatting about books. And in this podcast, I'll chat to authors, publishers and readers, giving you, dear listener, insight into what's hot on the Australian fiction scene. So if you're looking for your next book recommendation or just want to know more about Aussie fiction writers, this podcast is for you. Grab yourself a cuppa, sit back and enjoy. This year has been a big reading year for me. I've read many books and my to-be-read pile is growing ever higher as I discover authors I didn't know about before, many of whom I'm very pleased to say have been Australian. These authors have written stories of hope and of love, giving readers insight into the human condition. Others have spoken to my soul, giving me pause to reflect on my own life, my writing and what I wish to achieve. But by far one of my favourite discoveries this year was a book by Melbourne-based Aussie author Vanessa Carnevale. The Memories That Make Us is one of those stories that hooks you from its opening pages and stays with you forever. It's a gloriously rich novel and one that cannot fail to make you think, what would I do if that happened to me? It gives me great pleasure to welcome Vanessa to the podcast today. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Claudine. Thank you for such a lovely introduction.
It's my pleasure. Vanessa, The Memories That Make Us is your second novel. It was published earlier this year by Mira, an imprint of HarperCollins. Now, for listeners who haven't read it yet, can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. So The Memories That Make Us is a story about a woman by the name of Gracie. And after suffering an accident, she's left with amnesia. She's unable to recall most of the elements of her life, including who she is, the people around her, and that includes her fiancé, Blake, who she's supposed to be marrying in 3 months' time. So it's a story of self-discovery as Gracie goes on to try to find out who she is on her own terms. And there's a bit of a love story in the mix. And it's set amongst a backdrop of a beautiful flower farm set in Victoria, a fictional one.
Amazing. Now, where did the inspiration for this story come from?
Oh, this one here, would you believe it? It was a Saturday afternoon, boring Saturday afternoon, and I was folding laundry.
I can't believe you would have a boring Saturday afternoon.
Not boring Saturday afternoon. I had this pile of socks that I needed to be, organising, and they were inside out, and it got me thinking about my husband and how he always leaves his socks inside out when he puts them in the wash, despite my request to put them the right way. And it just, when you're doing a mindless activity and you're just thinking about random things, and I thought to myself, gosh, we've been together so many years and I have all this laundry to fold, and, over the years, did he always do his socks like this, or is it something that happened over time, and when did it start to annoy me? And then I started thinking, because writers were very imaginative and so on and so forth, and I thought, you know what, if I had my time over, because I was reflecting on my life now, and I have a wonderful life. We've been married for 15 years and we've got 2 beautiful children, and, we've been together a long time. But I thought to myself, if I had my time over, would I choose the same life for myself? Would I fall in love with this same man again if I had the chance, if I was the person that I am today? And that kind of just set me on a tangent. Of course I would, because I'm very happy with him, but it was more when that thought to me, if you had your time over, would you live the same life twice? That I knew that I had an idea for a story there, and it was basically merging that question there. It was a, what if question with that backdrop of a flower farm setting that I had come across. I don't know exactly when, but for a long time I knew that I was going to set a book one day on a flower farm. I'd been following a blog called Floret Flower. It's a flower farm in the US, and she's now become, an author. She's written a book, and she's got sort of calendars and diaries and things, and she does an amazing job in, selling seeds now, and she's really expanded her business. She's got just a beautiful, beautiful website. And so I really never knew that flower farming was a thing until I came across that blog, and then, having a character with amnesia, unable to remember her past or who she is, I just felt like that whole flower, that symbolism of the flowers, because flowers are so often associated with people we love and memories. I thought it would make a really great backdrop for the book.
So the book is set around Daylesford, a spa town about 100 or so kilometres northwest of Melbourne. What made you decide on Daylesford?
Daylesford is just somewhere that I love. I mean, it's so well known for, you know, girls' weekends, couples' weekends. You know, it is known as a spa town, and so there's the hot springs mineral springs in Hepburn Springs, and it's just a lovely country town, and so I really felt that would be a great place to set it. I also tossed up between there and Tasmania because, of course, I had to take into account that, you know, a flower farm needed to be in the right climate for, you know, for being able to grow different types of flowers, and there are actually a few flower farms in that Daylesford area that do exist, and I had been to a peony farm not far from Daylesford prior, so yeah, it just felt like a perfect fit.
Amazing. Fate versus destiny. Is there a difference? And how do you think Gracie's story explores this?
Yes, well, that was one of the questions that I asked myself as I was writing the story. And, you know, I think that as a writer, you probably know yourself, sometimes you are writing things to kind of work that out yourself in your mind. And I don't entirely know, you know, I don't entirely know if they exist. It's just something that, you know, I wanted to explore there. I think to some degree things are meant to be and we can't explain them, and then other things we really do play a part in, you know, in creating our own futures and what happens to us. So I think, yeah, it's just interesting to kind of explore that and see what can be.
Indeed. It takes a great deal of strength for Gracie to walk away from her life and to opt for a less travelled path to recovering her memories. Did you do a lot of research about amnesia and how people behave when faced with this situation?
That's really interesting, because one of the things I was really firm on with this book was the fact that I wanted Gracie to be a strong character that would not necessarily act in the way that we might expect someone to after suffering from this. And so I guess probably part of the challenge for me as a writer was to make that really clear to the reader why she acted the way that she did. And, you know, in terms of putting myself in her shoes, you know, I could completely see that it would be a situation where, you know, you'd be completely, you know, overwhelmed and scared about things. And I did do some research into amnesia. You know, this is something that's very, very rare, and it almost feels implausible when you hear about it. But I had read a memoir by a lady, I think her name was Sue Meck, and I think the name of that memoir, my memories, speaking of memories, my memory's not that great, but I think it was called I Forgot to Remember, and it was a story, her personal story of, you know, losing her memory. She basically one day she was in her kitchen and a ceiling fan fell on her head, and she had, I can't remember how many children now. I mean, I was reading this back in, I don't know, 2015. But she had children, and she woke up from, you know, after this accident, not being able to remember her husband or her children, and she had to learn basically, you know, basic tasks like maths, like being able to tie her own shoelaces again, you know, and I couldn't even fathom what that might be like, not being able to remember your family. And then, funnily enough, going on, you know, after the book was published, it's actually reached readers that have come back to me and said, you know, my dad suffered from something like this as well. So while it's rare, it can happen. So yeah, I read that memoir and was able to kind of imagine what it might be like for somebody after that sort of thing has happened to them.
Yeah, amazing. How important do you think reviving the flower farm was to Gracie's road to self-discovery?
Well, I think it was really important. I think anyone that reads the book will come to kind of understand, you know, how important that was for her. It was, you know, I think that a lot of the time we are so busy in our lives with the rush that we kind of lose sight often of who we are, and it's when we're able to kind of really stop and relax and bring ourselves back to nature, or bring ourselves back to who we really are, that we're able to kind of really thrive. And so that was symbolic in a way, in being able to connect Gracie with her mother that has passed on, but also with herself. So yeah, it was really very important for her.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Vanessa, your debut, The Florentine Bridge, was published in 2017. So that's 2 books in 2 years, which is remarkable. And I know you've written a third. Have you always wanted to be a writer?
You know, it's funny because I have this memory of myself in primary school. I was probably, at a guess, probably around 8 years old, and I remember we had a library teacher who would take us for library time once a week, and I really adored this teacher. Her name was Mrs. Waring, and she basically would talk to us. She'd read to us, but she would talk to us about the authors behind the books. And at the time, we were reading a lot of Roald Dahl, Judy Blume, Paul Jennings, Beverly Cleary, those sort of books. And she would talk to us about the authors behind the books. And I remember distinctly one day sitting there with my back against this shelf of books thinking, you know what, I would love to be an author one day. And that was quickly followed by a thought that was along the lines of, oh, but that's not a real job, or I don't know how you would become an author. So it was kind of like shifted aside for me. And, you know, in a way, like nobody really ever said to me, you know, you can have a career as an author when you grow up. And so I kind of just, you know, I drifted through kind of the high school years loving writing, always loving books and writing. I mean, I was such a bookworm. So I think it was all there, but it really wasn't until I became an adult that I decided that I was going to try my hand at long-form fiction. So, yeah, the short answer is yes, probably. It's always been there.
It's fascinating to me, after having spent so much time speaking to authors like you, that so many people say it was something they never thought about doing directly out of high school. It was, you know, it wasn't a career that they moved into naturally, even though they'd always had a desire to write. And I guess it's a testament to, you know, the way that the arts are seen worldwide, that it's not necessarily something that's stable.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you know what, it was really not until I read a book by Sir Ken Robinson. It's called The Element, How Finding Your Passion Changes Everything. I actually picked up that book. My son was quite young at the time. I can't remember if he was in kinder or had just started school. But anyway, I picked up that book just to kind of, you know, as a parent, to be more aware of my child's passions and how to really nurture those within him. He's always been very creative. He's a bit of a maker. You know, I could never throw recycling cardboard boxes out because he'd always be constructing things. He's 13 years old and he's still into that stuff. But that book spoke about some of the, you know, if you're an adult and you feel like you've lost sight of your natural talents or your passions, go back to your childhood and think about the things that you loved then and what were you drawn to. And for me, it was just always books and writing. It was like a light bulb clicked, and I thought, well, if that's the case, then why can't I write? Why can't I try writing? And that was really probably what made me more aware of this thing inside of me that had been there all along, if that makes sense. And so as a parent, I try to really foster my children's passions, and, you know, and let them see that, yes, it is okay to, you know, my daughter's very creative. So, you know, if she wants to strive for a career in art, she can do that. She says she wants to be vet, that's okay too. But I really try to nurture those things. And whenever I go out and talk to schools and things, I really try and emphasize that, you know, it's okay to pursue something in the arts. So it's really important. We should value it probably a little bit more than what we do.
I agree, absolutely. Now, Vanessa, you host writing retreats both in Italy and here in Australia. Can you tell me a little bit how that came about?
Yeah, so that came about. So I lived in Italy for quite a few years. I met my husband over there, and really that was the time when I wrote my first freelance article and sold it, and that was a really great time in my life. And so I just remember going over there and just feeling so incredibly inspired. And every time I'd go and visit on a holiday, I would just feel, I don't know, I'd feel lighter, I'd feel more creative, I'd feel like you know, just my imagination had that time and space to kind of, you know, relax and just explore new things. And I remember just saying, one day I'm going to host writing retreats in Italy. And it was just something that I held on to for quite a long time. And then once I was writing more seriously, I decided that I would actually give it a go. So I hosted my first retreat in Florence, which is where I lived. And so we set that up, and that was a success. And then I decided to do more. So I think I've done maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8 now. So it's just a part of my writing life that I really, really love. I love supporting other writers. And yeah, it's great to be able to kind of merge my love of Italy and host a few retreats over here for Australians as well. It's just, yeah, it's a lovely thing to do.
That's a truly magical and inspiring story. And as someone, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, like, it's a scary step to do something like that. But I think, for me, I had worked as a travel agent for a little while, so I had kind of the organisational skills to kind of put it together. But, doing anything that's a little bit different or new is going to be, scary and challenging. And I think that if we want to grow, if we want to kind of make a difference to other people's lives, then we need to step up to those challenges. So if you feel called to do something like, I don't know, write a book, set up a writing retreat, whatever it might be, it's normal for it to feel a little bit scary. I think people think, oh, how does she do it? But it's, I do get scared. I do feel, that my confidence is a little bit shaken when I do something new, but it's all worth it, and it's always worked out for me. So I'm really incredibly grateful for that.
I love that you're so bold and you just go out there and get it.
It's not like that though. I think, oh gosh, what am I doing? But it's exciting. It keeps things exciting. So yeah.
But it doesn't look like that from the outside. So more credit to you. Now, I was going to say, as someone who has just come away from one of your Trentham retreats, which is in Victoria, I can honestly say it was a lifesaver for me, and I can't recommend one of these retreats highly enough to any writer out there who needs some inspiration or a push in the right direction on a current project, or just some time away to get into the headspace needed to write. So I wanted to say, when and where are your next scheduled retreats?
Yes, so next year I'm so glad, by the way, that you had an amazing time. I loved spending time with you on retreat and working with you. It was just an honour. And this is the reason that I do it, just to hear people, talk about it afterwards and hear the difference that it's made to them. So that's just a little side note there, Claudine. But,
thank you.
The retreats for next year, at the moment, I am heading back to Trentham in March for 5 nights, and Italy, so back to Tuscany in April 2019, with a possible retreat also happening in September 2019. So, yes, it's going to be a busy year.
Very exciting. And you also offer manuscript assessments, is that right?
Yes, I've recently started offering those, and that really came about because I was being asked by people to do them, people that had come along to my retreats, or people that maybe couldn't necessarily come to a retreat, but they were, asking whether they might be able to get some support too. So there is a limit to how many I can do, but I'm enjoying that so far. So yeah, see how that goes.
Brilliant. Now, if someone was interested in doing that, how would they go about contacting you about this?
All the information's on my website. So I have my personal author website, vanessacarnevale.com, and I have the writing retreats and manuscript assessment information on my retreat website, which is yourbeautifulwritinglife.com.
Fantastic. Now, you've written 2 novels about 2 women who have some serious challenges to overcome. Was it always your intention to write about women? Is this deliberate, or just the way these stories came to you?
I don't think it was deliberate. I think it was just the way these stories came to me. I don't know. I think it's just, I create characters with whom I can probably identify with a little bit, or, are dealing with things that not necessarily that I have dealt with, but maybe I've been curious about. And so, yeah, it's just something that, has become it's just been natural, I guess, probably for me to feel drawn to writing about women. So, yeah.
And are there other writers out there who inspire your writing?
Yes, I think so. And, like what you're doing now, you're doing this podcast and you're able to connect with writers. That was definitely something that inspired me, especially in the beginning, because I was able to connect with like-minded people. I was able to connect with people that had gone on and written books, and I was learning about the way that they did things, and that was incredibly inspiring. I think it's difficult to single out writers, because there's so many wonderful writers that we have here in Australia and of course overseas. But yeah, I'm definitely inspired by listening to other writers' stories, and even by the books that I read. I think that it all helps. Often when I'm stuck with writing a book, and this, but I will say, what, I'm going to take a break from writing. I'm going to go read. And often when I'm reading, I can't actually finish the book that I'm reading because I feel so inspired to go back and write. So yeah, I always feel inspired by other writers.
That's wonderful. And Vanessa, is there something you're working on at the moment that you can talk about?
Do you know what? I would love to be able to talk about it, but I don't know enough to be able to talk about it. We were were joking about this before. I have started a new book, and every book, it just turns out that every book is different. You know, just when I think I know my process, it changes. So, you know, like we spoke about memories, it started with a what if question. You know, my other book had a slightly different start to it, and this book here, I have had a really vague idea of what I might be writing about, and I sort of tried to sit with that and work out a little bit more about my characters, a little bit more about the trajectory of the story, and nothing would come. And so I kind of gave into that and just decided that I would start writing. It's what I call my pre-draft, and I might completely have to rewrite things. It might be a total false start, but I felt that with this book I've needed to really explore things on the page before I get a good handle on what it is I'm writing. But I'm 3,000 words in, so it's really, really early.
Yeah, sure. No, I completely understand. Now, The Memories That Make Us is available in the UK and Canada, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And for any listeners tuning in from the US, it will also be available there in January 2019. This is very exciting, Vanessa.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I feel so happy that it's going to reach readers outside of Australia and New Zealand. So, yeah, it's a great thing.
I know they're going to love it.
Thank you.
Vanessa, if listeners wanted to connect with you or to learn more about your books, where can they find you?
Okay, so I'm on all the social media places, Instagram, Vanessa Carnevale. I'm on Facebook, and I have a website, vanessacarnevale.com.
Brilliant. Now, Vanessa's books are available from all good bookstores now or can be downloaded from selected e-retailers. With Christmas and holidays just around the corner, you can't go past Vanessa's books for that perfect holiday read. Vanessa, thank you so much for joining me on Talking Aussie Books today.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again. And for a chance to get your hands on a copy of The Memories That Make Us, head over to my Instagram or Facebook account and follow the directions to enter the draw to win. Well, that's a wrap, folks. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review on iTunes or drop me a line via my Instagram at Claudine Tinellis or on my webpage, claudinetинellis.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, happy reading.